What's going on, everybody? My name is Alex Wilson. I'm a co-host beside me, Anthony Arvado from Fireside Giants and Empire Sports Media Production. If you are a diehard Giants fan, you found yourself in the right place, my friends. Daily episodes talking about the draft and many other things regarding the Giants. You will not miss a piece of news listening to your boys right here on YouTube and via audio on Spotify and iTunes. But make sure to drop a comment below on YouTube. We love to engage with everybody and subscribe as always. Really excited to dive into two running backs today who the Giants have brought in for top 30 visits. Now, these two guys offer vastly different styles of play, but nonetheless, they are two quality players who the Giants could benefit from and a long-term perspective. Now, the word running back is very triggering for a lot of you. I understand. Over the past couple of years, we've seen the running back position kind of betray us in terms of injury. You know, we all love Saquon and what he can do on the field, but in terms of the injuries and wasting a number 2 overall pick on a running back in a position that now that we know we've learned from this, hopefully we never repeat this mistake, is not the best idea. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean that Saquon isn't a great player and he can't be productive this upcoming season. But I think that two running backs the Giants are looking at, Breese Hall out of Iowa State and James Cook out of Georgia. I want to discuss those two guys, Anthony. Before we do so, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great, and I think it is really interesting that the Giants are taking a look at running backs. Of course, everyone knows Saquon Barkley is the Giants' running back. I mean, unless they trade him, right? But it doesn't seem that likely that they will go ahead and trade Saquon Barkley. It seems like if they were going to trade Saquon, it probably would have happened by now. Of course, there was a lot of buzz that generated early on in the offseason, and now we're kind of at the point where we're gearing up for the NFL draft, and I haven't really heard any buzz about Saquon Barkley at this point. All I've heard is that the Giants are really excited to utilize him in the receiving game and get him more involved and build their offense around him. So I don't believe that they're going to trade Saquon Barkley. So why would they be looking at other running backs? Well, of course, they did cut Devontae Booker, and the backup running back position has always been a struggle for the Giants, especially considering the fact that Saquon Barkley is very injury prone. So maybe the Giants are trying to prepare for life without Saquon Barkley, whether it be for injury or maybe even for next year. Maybe they know that Saquon Barkley, this is the last year of his rookie contract. They're going to keep him because he's a good talent, and the Giants probably aren't going to be that competitive this year anyway. So might as well keep him on the roster and just let him go next offseason. Get a young running back in the room this offseason so that they can get him ready for next regular season. That might be the line of thinking here. And the two running backs that they're taking a look at are both really quality talents, and I'm a big fan of both of them. So I'm excited to dive in, Alex.
Absolutely. Now, the first guy I do want to dive into is James Cook. Like I said, both players were involved in actually going to the Giants facilities in their top 30 visits. So I think that that was pretty exciting to know that the Giants are obviously interested in these two guys. Now, James Cook is a really intriguing player. I think James Cook is a really nice complementary back. How could the Giants use him? Well, he's a stud receiver. That's something that I really like about James Cook. He's 5'11", 199 pounds. He made 15 appearances last year, tallying 728 yards on the ground and 7 touchdowns. He also had 284 receiving yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. So a nice little dabble of production there. I do like what he offers. Like I mentioned, receiving. That is something that he offers immediately. He even worked out as a receiver during his pro day at Georgia. So I think that's something that stands out as well. He projects as an early change of pace back and a receiving back out of the backfield. And Daniel Jones could definitely use that. The offensive line isn't going to be astronomically better. I think they will be better, but who knows how much. I think having a nice security blanket and one that doesn't drop passes is very nice. Devontae Booker was a good back last year, but he's not so much of a receiver. I think that pairing Cook with Barkley would be awesome. And I think that, he has the potential to be even maybe a starter down the line. But Anthony, when you're looking at James Cook, how do you see him? How do you see him fitting into maybe Brian Dable and Mike Kafka's scheme? Do you think he's more of a change of pace guy? Do you think he could be a legitimate starter down the road? But when you're looking at him, do you think that maybe 3rd round value is where you're looking?
I think that's a good value for James Cook. I'm not saying I necessarily want the Giants to go with a running back in the top 3 rounds because I do think that's kind of rich considering they have Saquon Barkley. But again, Saquon Barkley is very often injured, so it might be good for the Giants to just invest in that position a little bit. Obviously, not go in the first 2 rounds. That would definitely get me a little bit upset. But, Giants 3rd round pick, I could see them potentially going after James Cook. Now, how do I project him in the Giants offense in 2022? Well, yeah, change of pace back, a receiving running back, somebody who kind of does a whole lot in the offense for the receiving game. It's third down. The Giants need a big reception out of the backfield. James Cook goes onto the field, maybe in the backfield alongside Saquon Barkley, maybe in the backfield without Saquon Barkley, or maybe out wide in the slot. I think that he's got the versatility to do a whole lot. He's a great route runner, has great hands, and he's super shifty after the catch. So I really like James Cook and that facet of the game, the receiving portion of the game, running between the tackles too frequently because risk of injury. And it kind of seems like the Giants are looking at running backs because of Saquon Barkley's injury. So James Cook is a guy that, Dalvin Cook's brother, he's got the good genes in him. I think that he's going to have a good, successful NFL career. Kind of reminds me of Jamal Charles in a way, former Chiefs running back. Really has that shiftiness and that phenomenal receiving ability out of the backfield. So day one, I think that he's going to be a solid contributor as a scat back, as a third down running back. So I really like that idea for the Giants.
Right, and looking at the difference between James Cook and Breece Hall out of Iowa State. Now, Breece Hall, guys, this is someone that I really like. I really, really like Breece Hall. He's an immediate bell cow workhorse starting running back, and he probably has a second-rate grade on him. If you watch the way he plays, it reminds me a lot of Jonathan Taylor. Is he Jonathan Taylor? Absolutely not. Do not get jump to conclusions. But the way he plays reminds me of him. 5'11", 217 pounds. Actually, it's a pretty similar frame to James Cook, maybe an extra 20 pounds there. So that's pretty significant. He actually ran a faster 40-yard dash at 4.39. He has some good straightaway speed. And Lance Zierlein compared him to Matt Forte. Which is definitely a very lofty comparison there, but he has great size, power, patience behind the line of scrimmage. That's something I really like about Breece Hall. When you watch him play, he's very patient. He picks his gaps. He moves defenders at the second level. He's able to kind of shift guys in space, and I really like that about him. He can make guys miss in the open field. He has the power to break tackles in the gap at the first level and then the second level. So he's a guy that I think is an immediate starting running back, but he's also a guy that if you paired him with a Saquon Barkley, he can power through for a yard or two. He can be a guy that develops nicely behind Saquon for a season, or he can start day one. I think that, when you're looking at him, the Giants may go with a similar strategy, which is why I think James Cook may be the preference here. If you look at the Buffalo Bills and Joe Shane, what they did there with Zach Moss and Devin Singletary, that definitely suggests that James Cook might be the move because it's kind of like Saquon and Cook is like a rich man's Singletary and Moss if you have a good offensive line. But Breece Hall's a totally different type of back. I think if you're looking for a more workhorse, he had 800 carries over his collegiate career. The guy is an absolute stud. He set tons of records in Iowa State. So I really, really like him. He's a kind of a one-cut, get vertical type of runner. He picks his holes very, very strategically, but he's not like this scat back guy. He can catch passes. He's not a bad receiver, but Cook definitely offers more from a receiving standpoint, Anthony. But when you're talking about the different styles of play, which one do you prefer? Do you prefer the change of pace, kind of scat back type of guy that Cook is right now, but could develop into more, or the workhorse in Breece Hall, who has proven to be healthy despite taking on such a big workload and really just producing at the collegiate level at a rate that really you don't see very often. I think that's pretty impressive. And the Giants having a back like that, if they had a good rushing attack and a good offensive line, could be really, really beneficial to get a guy like Hall.
Yeah, I'll say a few things about Breece Hall. I think that Matt Forte comparison is really solid because Matt Forte was a great receiver out of the backfield and he was a powerful runner. Usually you see those shifty, elusive guys like James Cook be those receivers out of the backfield, but Matt Forte was a bell cow. He was also powerful. He was a good receiver. That does remind me a lot of the traits that I see in Breece Hall because he is a very good receiver for a guy that's really known to be that bell cow, workhorse, powerful running back. And one thing that I do have, though, that I'll say is a question mark for Breece Hall, considering he's touched a football more than any running back ever in the past 2 years. I mean, he's just constantly getting reps and he's constantly touching the ball. What is the longevity in the NFL, right? How long is his NFL career going to last? Because he's already used up so much of his time running the football in college. And that's my biggest concern probably with Hall is the fact that he's already had so many touches with a football, taken such a beating, at the collegiate level. How much of a beating can his body continue to sustain at the NFL level? That's a big question mark for me. Now, I like Breece Hall a lot. I really like his playing style because I do think he provides a lot as a receiver. And I also think that he's pretty shifty, elusive. He's a great tackle breaker, has good vision. He's a very good running back prospect. But I do think he's a running back prospect that's going to go pretty high in the 2022 NFL draft, maybe even the second round. And again, James Cook is maybe a third round prospect. Now, I really believe that the Giants should be going after running backs that early in the draft? Personally, I do not. But for Brees Hall, if they were to draft him, I think that he would probably be penciled in as a future starter. I think, you take a look at Saquon Barkley. He is in the last year of his contract. I doubt that the Giants are going to go ahead and extend him and pay him all that money considering the injuries that he's had. If they were to draft Brees Hall, I think they'd probably pair him with Saquon Barkley for the first year. Let Saquon Barkley go next year and just have Brees Hall take over. So I could see the value in doing something like that because then, once again, cheap running back on a rookie contract with a lot of talent and super young. So I like Brees Hall a lot in that regard. I think that could be the succession plan at the running back position. But again, running back position, how valuable is it? How great of a succession plan do you really need at that position? That's the question for me. But of course, Brees Hall, James Cook, both really talented prospects in their own right, very different from one another. One is kind of purely a scat back going into the 2022 season. The other one is kind of a workhorse, kind of has a lot more tools in his belt. So I really like Brees Hall for that aspect of his game. The fact that he can be a bell cow, the fact that he can be a down-to-down rusher. So I like that a lot in Brees Hall's game.
Yeah, absolutely. But guys, I'd love to hear your opinions below on these two running backs. Which one would you rather have, the bell cow or the change of pace kind of receiving back to start their career? Of course, like I said, James Cook could end up being better than that. He could end up being a starting running back, or the Giants could, have this dual threat that they like to that they built in the Buffalo Bills with Joe Shane and Brian Dable and Singletary and Moss, which is definitely something that could happen as well. I think they're kind of ignoring Gary Brightwell this time. I think he was more of a Joe Judge pick, but it seems like they're interested in running backs. I would love either of these two guys. I think they present different values entirely, but both players have the potential to be impact guys at the next level. So I'd love to hear your opinions below. As always, my friends, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants video.